let's talk about other things here concerning the culture. This is concerning Mimi the music blogger. Big up Mimi the music blogger. She wrote this Substack talking a little bit about Bouncer's rise and some of the comments he's been making recently pertaining especially to this cultural reset. Bouncer's been talking about a cultural reset, which if I'm not mistaken, his meaning behind it is that a lot of these there's a few people coming up, him included, people like Tanks, who are now becoming like the de facto voice, I guess, of the UK music industry, or they're becoming big platforms now. They're breaking stories, they're having big interviews, they're part of a larger conversation, and maybe the onus, maybe the focus on certain other platforms, like maybe the Shadeborough, has now been shifted to other people and content creators like Bouncer and Tanks and others. And he's calling that a cultural reset. Like maybe no longer is the culture being held up by platforms like Grime Daily and shit, and, you know, Mixtape Madness, and more so by individuals on podcasts, individuals with their own platforms like Bouncers, like Tanks. I personally don't agree with it whatsoever. I don't think there ever will be a cultural reset. I think those brands and those platforms are going to do what they do, and they're going to still be successful doing what they do. I think it's one thing to not like what the Shadeborough does, and it's another thing to say just because you're successful that it somehow means that they're not going to be successful either. I think people enjoy the Shadeborough because of what they post and what they're about. I don't think people are surprised by what they post based on, you know, the name of the platform be the Shadeborough. I don't think they're that annoyed by it. I think if you don't like that kind of content, you're not going to follow that platform in the first place. You're going to block it, you're going to mute it, you're going to whatever. You're just not going to be about it. But I don't really think you're going to be annoyed when you hear them talking about certain people a certain way. Will they have their agendas and their favorites? Yes, that happens in all parts of the industry, all parts of media. It's a story that all the time, but I don't necessarily think that's the cultural reset that he thinks it's going to be. But anyway, Mimi the music blogger spoke about it a bit on her Substack. Let's see what she had to say. The article's title is "The Reset Everyone's Talking About But Nobody's Actually Doing." Let's see what she says. I know I've talked about going to work, coming home, and knowing the difference between industry connections and actual friends, but today I want to dig into something that's been sitting on my heavy on my mind. Something everyone's whispering about but nobody's actually addressing. The reset. Everyone's talking. Black executives, industry panels, music journalists, Bouncer Play Dirty saying it every other week. Your favorite artists on their Finsta, LinkedIn clickbait, viral Twitter threads. They're all saying the same thing. We need a reset. The culture needs a reset. The black industry needs a reset. That's Bouncer there. But here's the uncomfortable truth. We're all just diagnosing the problem. Nobody's actually offering the cure. Before I go further, I'm not preaching at you. I'm talking with you. I'm learning this in real time, figuring it out as I go. But the more I pay attention to these conversations, the more I see we're stuck in this loop. We all know something's broken. Hip hop hasn't dominated the charts like it used to. October 2025 marked the first time in decades with 0 rap songs in the top 100. Artist development is dead. TikTok virality replaced real talent cultivation. We can all see it. But what are we actually doing about it? By the way, I think that's a false question as well. Why should we do anything about it? Just let it play out, no? This is another cycle. We had a cycle before that was one cycle. This is another one. Let it play out. The next thing will replace it. I don't think we need to do anything about it personally, but I could be mistaken. It continues. The cultural truth. The post-COVID laziness took over. Here's the cultural truth, she says, that nobody wants to fully admit. Since COVID, we've gone lazy, and I mean that specifically. Something shifted in the air. We started wanting everything out of convenience, everything delivered, everything instant, everything optimized for ease. Deliveroo, Uber Eats. When these platforms exploded, it wasn't like delivery was new. Teenagers were delivering pizza, Chinese food, and Indian food before apps existed. They were grinding, making tips, learning work ethic, dealing with customers face to face. Now we tap a button. We don't even speak to a human. And that mindset, that I want it now effortlessly with zero friction mentality, it bled into everything, including how we approach music careers. That's a bit of a reach. That's a bit of a reach, man. That's a bit of a reach and a false equivalency. I don't agree with that whatsoever. Anyway, it continues. We want convenient success. We want the viral moment without the years of development. We want to skip the basement shows. We want the rejected demos, the 1,000 hours in the studio learning your sound. We want the outcome without the uncomfortable process. People only want that because there are some people who make it without doing all that hard shit. That's why. I don't think people want that because they don't want to work. I think people, this is a complete mistake. I think what's happening in real life is that there's people out there who are making it without having many talents, without having any discernible talent, becoming very successful in a very short space of time, regular people see that and they want it too. But unfortunately, they're not seeing the fact that those people aren't the norm. You know, they're the exception. They don't actually see that. They think that speaks to the whole entire industry. But unfortunately, those people's success isn't partly the reason why there are people out there thinking that they can make it too. You know, if they just fucking posting their fucking reels and shit. When really and truly it's about timing, it's about luck, it's about this, it's about this. It continues anyway. The industry adapted to feed this. Labels started chasing TikTok trends instead of building artists. They invest 3 years developing someone when you can't throw 50 artists at the wall and see who goes viral. Yeah, of course. The industry's to blame to this too. The platform's somewhat to blame. I get it, but yeah. It's cheaper, it's faster, it's more convenient. But it's also why we're in this mess, she says. And when Universal Music pulled this entire catalog from TikTok in 2024, that should have been the alarm. One licensing dispute and suddenly the entire discovery engine goes silent. If one platform disagreement can mute your strategy for months, you don't have a strategy. You have a single point of failure. The lazy culture the OGs are talking about. Don't take my word for it, listen to the veterans who've been here. Ice Cube called it out directly last week. Artists performing over vocal tracks, not even bothering to rap their own verses live, just standing there, letting their record do the work for them while they wave their hands around. They got on stage and said, don't you hate that shit? You spend your money for tickets, you come to a show and sing all the fucking words. Come on, man. It's some bullshit, man. Yeah, but I don't think that's to do with like this idea of instant success or not wanting to do the work. I just think you can get away with it. Like, it's not, I think laziness is probably a bit too big of a term, too loaded of a word to say to describe that. I think most artists that do the whole performing with the backing track on stage do so because they can get away with it. The fans don't demand that much from them. For instance, Playboi Carti on this Antagonist tour, for the first time ever really, has been actually rapping into it's not much, but he actually raps into the mic. He gets on top of his stage, which is on top of these two big lorries, semi trucks and shit, and he like does some sort of choreographed dance thing. It's not much, but it's something that has blown the fans' mind, and it's made, I think, the live shows more electric. It's made more people wanting to go out and see them. Same goes for NBA Youngboy. NBA Youngboy has this weird thing where he actually does sing over a backing track, but he sings over it. Like, he raps every lyric. It's a very ghetto way of doing things, but he still does it. People love it. His shows are electric. There's pyrotechnics, there's screens, there's lights, there's smoke, there's all this type of shit. There's dancers on stage. So I think because some people can get away with it, they have. Some people are making the change to change it, and they have. I've heard some people suggest that the reason why Playboi Carti is actually performing is because of the tour he's been on with The Weeknd. He's been on 2 back-to-back tours, actually. He was touring with The Weeknd, and as soon as he got off that tour, he started the Antagonist tour. So people are suggesting that opening for The Weeknd at all these different venues, all these different arenas around the world, performing for an audience that doesn't want to like think about it, right? I couldn't imagine a worse artist to go see before seeing The Weeknd than Playboi Carti, right? They don't really share a lot in terms of overlap when it comes to fans. But I'd imagine if you're Carti, that's a really good way to sharpen your performance, you know, to really figure out what type of artist you want to be. Because in his mind, maybe Carti probably sees himself as a Weeknd, of trying to ascend to those type of heights where you become really big, really commercial. You start to do these massive arenas and shit, do these really big records that kind of transcend your niche, transcend your genre. But he's been able to be exposed to that level of artistry, that level of performance, because he opened for The Weeknd, and now it's changed his outlook. But I don't necessarily think those other artists that don't do that, the ones that perform at fucking you know, I forgot that fucking big rap show, they do so because they can get away with it, because no one, the fans don't demand much from them. If your live show needs the crowd to do the verses, it's not a show, it's a karaoke. Yeah, but that's also not true. Everyone does their show differently. I know Drake has a section of his show where he kind of just leaves the mic on the stage, and everyone kind of sings along to it, and he kind of treats it as that. He treats it as like a big karaoke night. Like, hey, I'm gonna ad lib, I'm gonna hype you up, you're gonna sing these records because I know they mean so much to you. And part of the reason why you go to a Drake show is to rap along to all the words. You know, I would like it myself, actually, if there was a beat. I'm sure he would do it. He did do it before, actually. That show where he kind of was in like a screen, a glass box, where he does like a B-side show where he does actually just stand there and like you hear him breathing, performing into the mic, rapping these records. That'd be fucking sick. But everyone's got a different way of doing their shows. I just want people to put energy into it, You know, make it worthwhile someone's money, because these shows aren't cheap. Even if you're like a D-level artist, like you're probably, especially with Live Nation being involved, you probably have to charge 50 quid. So someone who's paying 50 quid to come and see you, they deserve a show, you know? I don't want you to stand there like next to the DJ, just like, you know, going through the motions. Anyway, so Busta Rhymes that was been vocal about the same thing. He watches shows where artists can barely get through their set because they never learned to actually perform. They learned to make TikToks. They learned to go viral, but they never learned the craft. Same goes for the fans, though, innit? Because they remember that whole thing with I forgot his fucking name, but the artist where he blew up on one of his songs blew up on TikTok. Then those fans went to go see him perform, didn't realize that he has more songs than that one song, and were kind of put off because he didn't play that the song that they would love first, you know. And they didn't know how to like act in the show, so they kind of made the show a bit weird. But yeah, that was funny. At Essence Fest, it literally stopped mid-performance to tell the fans to put their phones down, but then weird ass devices down. Them shits don't control the soul. Fuck your phone. Let's go back to interacting like humans. These aren't just old heads being bitter. They're pointing at the real decline in standards, a real loss in discipline. Think about what Beyonce Queen Bee showed us. Queen Bee, okay, relax. In the homecoming, hundreds of hours of rehearsals, drilling choreography until it's musical memory, vocal warm-ups, costume fittings, production meetings. She's already Beyonce. She doesn't need to work that hard anymore, but she does anyway because it's what excellence requires. But requiring excellence from like SoundCloud artists is kind of insane, though, isn't it? You got to get it where you got to get it from. You shouldn't require that level of artistry, that level of output from like everybody. That's why she's who she is, isn't it? Like, really. But anyway, what do I know? She continues, compare that to artists now who want Beyonce level success but are unwilling to put in Beyonce level work. They want the outcome about the I don't think that's true either. I don't know who she's talking about. I don't what artists that exist out there that want Beyonce level success doesn't want to work as hard. I think most people acknowledge that Beyonce is where she's at because of her work ethic, because of her level of performance, and they don't want that. They want maybe a portion of her success, maybe 5%, 10%, but they don't want to do the work. So that's what they want. And they want 5% success, they do 5% of the work. The human truth, we chase attention instead of investment. Here's the human truth cutting across all of this. We'd rather have attention than make any actual investment in our craft. Everyone wants to be an influencer. Everyone wants a viral moment, the explosion of followers, the chart debut that validates it. But building something that lasts, building a career that requires that survives past the algorithm 2-week memory, that requires different energy entirely, that requires showing up when everyone's watching, that requires practice sessions that won't become content, that requires discipline when discipline isn't ready. But that's the thing, though. I don't think people care about that because nobody even know how long they're going to be alive. You know, people just want to lick. They want to at least have a moment where they can enjoy life. They're not looking past that moment because they know if they can just have a little moment that can maybe allow them to enjoy life, it might allow them to survive however many years later on. But they don't want to be wallowing in strife, in like struggle forever. I feel that's why most people maybe want that instant viral success, because at least it gives them something, you know? Like if you've been toiling away doing open mics, you know what I mean? You're more worried about viral success because you know how bleak it is doing open mics. You just want to have one moment in your life where you're successful, quote unquote. You know? I don't think that's wrong. I don't think that's bad. Maybe it's not the most productive thing for a long-term career, but do they even want to be there long-term? Do they care about it long-term? They want just have something to show for it. Look at what's happened to hip-hop in the charts. For the first time in decades, we're seeing sustained periods with no rap songs. Not because of the culture isn't innovative. Black music hasn't been the blueprint, has always been the blueprint everyone else copies. Oh, all right, let's relax. But because somewhere along the way we've stopped investing in fundamentals. No, I just think it changes. It can't even be like, I think there's too much put on this side. There's too much put on this thing about there's no black song, there's no hip hop songs on the top 100 anymore. That means hip hop is dead. Or it's a shift in culture. There was a time where there was always a song from the hip hop genre in the top 100. Now there isn't. It's a shift, and it will shift again. It will cycle through again. The same way how, I don't know, I don't think 10 years ago people would have predicted that Mamdani would have become the mayor of New York, right? With his progressive socialist kind of ideas. But he is, because it's a shift. Because we've had a lot of the right wing sort of stuff and media and stuff, and now there's been a shift to the other way. So really and truly, if you're thinking about it, even looking at the Mamdani stuff, as a kind of little subside, it's probably likely the Democrats, if they want to win against whoever the Republican candidate is next time round, you're probably better off having somebody run who's really super lefty, as opposed to like a moderate Democrat and shit, you know, like a whatever, you know. You're probably better off having the opposite of whoever is running on the right hand side, as opposed to somebody that is a bit more sensible and even. No, you want somebody that's very, very radical, very, very left leaning, very progressive, to kind of counter what's going on the right, because then it gives people a real choice. What do they want, as opposed to like a choice in, like, you know, in sheep's clothing, a choice, you know, that's kind of like, you know, a little bit deceptive and shit. That's what we're getting now. So maybe really and truly what you need, if you want to see a change in the maybe representation of hip hop on these charts, is something really different, you know, something really fucking different that challenges people, something that challenges norms, something that really pushes the envelope, something that's maybe a very, very counter what we're hearing now, you know, to kind of really throw things off a loop a little bit. That might change things, but I don't know. It just also might just be a cycle and not that deep. We traded Motown style artist development for TikTok virality. We traded years of honing a craft for quick playlist placements. We traded building ecosystems for building follower accounts. I don't think that's wrong again. I just think it's it's the industry. It evolves. You have to evolve with it. You have to change with it. Not all the changes are going to be beneficial to you. Not all the changes are going to be helpful to the industry at large. Not all the benefits and evolutions are going to be good. But it's just the way it is. I think complaining about TikTok and playlists is just boring, man. It's like, just adapt to it, make it work for yourself, figure out something else that can replace it or that can be an alternative to it. But the constant complaints about it's just like, ugh, so what? Like, so what? Another one. And when I say we, I'm not just talking about artists. I'm talking about labels, management, A&R. The whole infrastructure got lazy. Everyone took the convenient route. People will tweet bringing back real artist development and get 50k likes, then immediately go to chasing the same viral trends they were criticized. Yeah, but that's because it's harder to do, innit? That's why. Like, obviously, it's harder to do artist development the traditional way. It's easier to try and get a viral moment. Unfortunately, the viral moments have outweighed the traditional side of things, but it's just the nature of the game. We see the problem clearly, we can articulate it beautifully, but we're not solving it, we're just creating a problem around it. What I learned watching Girl Bands Forever. I spent last Saturday, Berry Gordy. Why this conversation keeps coming up. Here's why the reset keeps appearing in every panel discussion, every think piece, every late night conversation in the industry. We all feel it. The producer sees industry wanting one session to create a hit instead of the months developing a sound. The A&R labels unwilling to invest 3 years in an artist when they can chase quick TikTok win. The veteran artist sees young talent burning out at 23 because there's no infrastructure to support their long careers. The fan sees their favorite artist lip singing to backing tracks because they never learn to actually perform. We're all diagnosing the same disease, hip-hop chart struggles. But that's the thing though, right? What I personally think with this reset when it comes to Bouncer and these other people, you know what it is? I don't think it's a reset. I just think they want to be involved. I think they want to be the de facto people. They want to be the industry leaders. They want to be the gatekeepers. They think the current gatekeepers are lame, they're sneaky, they're dorks, they're shit at their jobs. Maybe they have an overinflated sense of self and they want to replace them. That's it. I don't think the reset is any deeper than that. I think the artists coming up who see certain artists getting the awards, certain artists getting certain looks, they also want to replace them. It's just a replacement thing. It's not a reset of real weight and benefit to anything else other than people's own careers. It's a real selfish thing to reset. It doesn't serve anybody else but themselves. No one wants a reset to like allow the fans to have better artists to follow and to be a fan of and to see perform live. No one's asking for a reset in like ticket prices. No one's asking for a reset in like more venues being, you know, launched and opened up around the world. No one's asking for a reset for like more accessibility, more diversity in industry to allow different faces, different people from different backgrounds to get involved. Everyone's asking for a reset so that they can become the leader. They can become the forebearer. They can become the spokesperson. They can become the person in charge. That's what they want it for. The reset is entirely selfish. They don't want anything for anybody else. They just want to replace all the fucking people that are there already because maybe they got scummed over. They got treated. I think that's part of Bouncer's origin story. He didn't get treated with a level of respect he probably thought he deserved, thought he was entitled to. He may have got scummed. The Shade Room did this to me. They did that to me. Little man this, little man that. Captain Conan this, dig that. You know what I mean? There's all these things. And then you want to you want to be in charge now. You want to call the shots, which he's obviously now doing, airing out the, his grievances with ZZ Mills, grievances with Shade Barrow, grievances with this person, giving people 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours. Everyone just wants to be in charge. They want to have that role themselves, Even this thing he's got against Posty from Graham Daly. A bit of a mug move what that Posty guy did, trying to hide the fucking thoughts on the Cully with the gets and stuff. I can understand why he did it. I can get it because I guess they're friends. He's trying to help him, but Barbara Streisand effect was in full order there. He tried to hide it, and it just made it people more determined to find it. They found a clip, probably one of the most damaging clips actually from it, where Getz is driving super recklessly, and it kind of made him look a certain way, especially after the death of that young man that he ran over. So people look at that and see, yeah, Posty's a bad guy, but you just want to replace him so you can become the next. But you want your platform to be the next Graham Daly. Do you know what I mean? It's not even like you want to reform, you want to change things for the better. You just want to be that guy. You want to be the guy that has the gala event and shit. It's all self-serving, really. That's what I think it is. Anyway, it continues as, but the real conversation, the uncomfortable one, is this: what are we building instead? Not what's wrong with the industry. We know what's wrong. Not how it used to be better. We can't go backwards. What are we going to do today with the tools and reality that we have? Yeah, it's a good question. She says the reset actually needs to happen. So here's what I think is the reset requires. No more panels, no more think pieces, no more social media diagnosis. Actual solutions, actual actions. Bring back discipline, the Beyonce kind. Not morning routine discipline, not I wake up at 5 a.m. and I journal discipline. Discipline that Beyonce showed in the Homecoming. Hundreds of hours of rehearsals for a performance she could have done in her sleep. The discipline that Motown artists going through finishing school even after they get signed. The discipline that Busta Rhymes is still performing like every show matters. This means artists actually learn to perform live, not just over vocal tracks. Producers finishing songs properly instead of rushing to catch a trend. Labels investing in development instead of hopping on viral moments. Dancers, vocalists, performers actually practicing their craft when nobody's watching. That could easily be remedied by the industry. Labels could easily enforce this as a rule, as a requirement, and it could easily be done. That doesn't really, it doesn't really even require you rallying call to the artists as well, because they won't do it unless they're incentivized and stuff, or they're told to do so. But I think labels could easily do that. They don't do that because the discipline requires more time. More time then takes away time from making more stuff quickly. So that's why they don't do it. But that's maybe a good one. Number 2, separate diagnosis from solution. Stop posting about the problem without showing what you're doing differently. No, that's the whole point of social media, though. It's a complain, it's a win, it's a moan. I think to everybody that they can't complain about something, it's a bit idiotic, really. Personally, I love Mimi, but come on, that's not going to work that way. If you hate TikTok culture, why are you building outside of it? If you want art, you can hate TikTok culture, still build within it and make the change that you want to see within the app itself. You could just talk about different things, If everyone's talking about stats on fucking TikTok, and then when it comes to music, you can just focus on talking about the actual music itself. If everyone's only interviewing a certain level of artists, you could use your TikTok to interview smaller artists, That's all beneficial. Rebuild ecosystems, not solo empires. Stop trying to do everything yourself. The Girl Bounce Forever era worked because everybody played their position. The Motown model worked because Berry Gordy understood you need specialists. The artist focused on performing, the producer focused on sound, the managers focused on strategy. Now every artist thinks they need to be a full service company. They do that because there's not enough money. I think most artists do everything not because they like to do everything, not because they want to do everything, but because there's no money to pay for people to do the things that they can't do. And nowadays, if you try to make somebody work for you for free, just for the look, just for like some mutually beneficial fucking whatever, people start talking about you like you're some fucking slave labor or something, So you can't even do that nowadays. You can't even engage in free labor in free labor exchange or something, mutually beneficial free labor exchange, you get chastised. You don't have the money to pay for somebody to do it for you because there's no money in record producing. Nowadays, people, labels are taking profit, you know, taking money from you from live shows and shit. It's all over the gaff. So I think people do that because of, you know, needs must. So I think, and when the money improves, the splits improve, people will divvy out most of that stuff more. Invest long term, not just in virality. I also don't buy this. I think you could invest in both. You can invest in short term and long term. You can do both at the same time. You can do short term because short term will give people the eyes to see you, and then long term you can then show them that you're that guy or girl, they, them, whatever. You know what I mean? But I don't think there's one or either or. Number 5, know the difference between industry and friendships. Did you know your network isn't your family, your collaborations aren't your therapist, your industry friends aren't your real friends. Professional relationships are valuable, essential, but they're not the same as real friendships. Yeah, that's true. But still, you can still get something out of these friendships, out of these collaborations, out of these whatever you're going to call the relationships. You still can get something out of them that can be beneficial to either party's career. I don't think there's anything wrong with that whatsoever. The truth is, I'm still learning. I'm writing this for me as much as for you. I can't complain about convenience culture without scrolling and creating. Can't criticize attention coming without obsessive checking my own metrics. I can't call it reset without resetting myself. The reset everyone's talking about is in culture. It has to reset with us individually, quietly, without the audience. It's not about pointing about what's broken anymore. It's about it's done exhaustively. As you called it out. No, but it is though, isn't it? I don't know. So the question is, what are you exactly trying to do about a reset? What are you talking about? Not what you think you should do. What are you building right now? What uncomfortable work are you putting in when everyone's watching? Again, I don't think everyone needs to work for this. I think fans should just sit back and enjoy it. I don't think everyone needs to participate in order to kind of help the problem. I think just talking about it is also helping, bringing light to it and shit, being aware of it, and making obviously your conscious choices to kind of, you know, not to perpetuate it and shit. But I think in general, a lot of the issues that we're having now is based on the industry just being a broken place, being full of fraudsters, being full of hucksters and shit, and being a place where generally a lot of people can't make money. And it just fucks them over, and it kind of leads them to doing dodgier things, weirder things, collaborating with maybe artists they probably shouldn't collaborate with, making stuff they shouldn't probably make for the sake of $1, working with certain brands for the sake of this, selling out too early, doing questionable shows with certain people, going on tour in certain places because you just want to get a certain look, and it ends up fucking up your overall image, blah, 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 blah. All these things are in part due to just the industry and people's inability to just make money from what they do, make music. So now they're having to turn into content creators, live streamers. I saw a really interesting clip with fucking Blueface recently where he spoke about being wary about not becoming a full-time content creator because it's gonna damage his music and his reputation and how he's looked at in a certain way. Because he described it really well. He basically said that in order to become a content creator or to become an influencer or live streamer, you have to be okay with being with making yourself look like an idiot. You have to be okay with making yourself look like a fool, with doing stupid things, doing dumb things, because that helps what you're doing. Hates people like, you know, gauge, but it can devalue your image and your brand, especially in hip hop, right? People are going to be, you're going to be looked at as corny. You know, DDG is a good example of it. You know, he doesn't make bad music compared to other people out there in hip hop, but people don't really take him seriously because of how corny he might come across on his fucking content and stuff in his streams. So he said that's a really balance you have to kind of consider when you're an artist. Like, don't go all the way into the content bag, because if you do, people aren't going to take your music seriously. So therein lies the problem, you know. Those things are probably more of a problem than anything else. But I think talking about it is important. I just think where it comes from, the genesis of this whole conversation, the likes of Bouncer and stuff, I just generally think he wants to be the leader. He wants to be the guy, as opposed to wanting to reset it. I don't really think he cares about resetting the industry in the slightest. I think he mostly cares about being the guy, which is okay. But I think you should just be honest with your intentions. You should just be honest with your intentions. But again, what do I know when it comes to this stuff? Absolutely nothing. What do I know when it comes to this stuff? Absolutely nothing.